My name is Alina Vance, and I live in Seattle, Washington, a city that always felt like a place where dreams could actually take root and grow even if they were a little wild and tangled at first. I was 32 years old, and I had spent the last 5 years pouring every ounce of my soul into building the Canopy Retreats, a collection of boutique hotels that focused on unique, sustainable experiences nestled in the Pacific Northwest's most stunning natural spots. My world was a beautiful blend of spreadsheets and hiking boots of investor calls and late-night design sessions with my incredible husband, David. He was the visionary architect, the one who saw beauty in reclaimed wood and innovative energy solutions. And I was the one who made sure the numbers added up, and the guests felt like they were coming home. What was interesting about us was how perfectly our strengths intertwined, how we built something from nothing with sheer grit and a shared dream. We valued authenticity, connection, and leaving a light footprint on the earth, things my father Arthur Vance never quite understood or respected. He was a titan of finance back in New York, a man who measured success in quarterly reports and market share, and he always wanted me to follow in his footsteps into a life of corporate boardrooms and predictable returns. My place in his world was supposed to be heir apparent, but I chose a different path, a path that led me to David and to these small, eco-friendly hotels that were now making a surprisingly big splash. The problem that shook my world and left me deeply unsatisfied was the gaping hole my father's disapproval left. It wasn't just his dismissive attitude toward my career choice, it was his deliberate absence at my wedding 3 years ago. My mother, bless her heart, kept smoothing the front of my dress, whispering that he might still come, but he never did. David, though he never said it, wore a quiet sadness for my sake. He took my hands and looked into my eyes, telling me we were already there and that was enough, but a part of me always listened for footsteps that never arrived. It was a rejection not just of me, but of the life I had chosen and the man I loved. His disdain felt like a cold stone in my gut, a constant reminder that I wasn't good enough in his eyes. Fast forward to now, and our company Vance Hospitality was booming. D started with a single renovated lodge on Orcas Island, and now we had 8 stunning properties from the Olympic Peninsula to the Columbia River Gorge, all buzzing with delighted guests and glowing reviews. We were featured in Forbes, and the Wall Street Journal was calling asking about our plans to expand into British Columbia. It was then amidst the whirlwind of success that his name lit up my phone screen. An unexpected text message from Arthur Vance. Family dinner, 7 o'clock, important discussion. 3 years of silence compressed into a single, demanding line. It was not an invitation, it was a summons. My blood ran cold, but a flicker of a different emotion sparked within me, a nascent fire of defiance. I was in our downtown Seattle office, high above the vibrant streets, when his message came through. My assistant Maria stood in the doorway confirming a video conference with our London team for later that evening. I looked at the text again, my father's familiar terse tone a stark contrast to the buzzing excitement of my day. "Move it," I told Maria, my voice sharper than I intended. She glanced at my screen, her brow furrowing slightly. "Everything okay, Alina?" she asked. I just shook my head. Tonight just changed. 3 years ago, I might have read that message with a desperate hope for reconciliation, for a sliver of warmth. Now I knew my father too well. He preferred structure to softness, transactions to emotions. He had always loved the right, addressed the right future, the right decisions made in the right order. I had stepped outside that frame the day I chose David, a creative architect with big ideas and a kind heart over the financial world he had mapped out for me. That day 3 years ago, when I walked down the aisle without him, it was a painful but necessary break. Now I felt the familiar tightening in my chest, but also a newfound resolve. My company Vance Hospitality was worth a significant sum, well over $500 million and growing. We were not just successful, we were revolutionary in the sustainable tourism space. My mother's elegant home in Queen Anne Hill looked almost unchanged. It was the same classic Seattle style, with large windows overlooking Puget Sound, that she had always adored, a place that held both cherished memories and sharp pangs of past hurt. She opened the door herself, wearing a cream silk blouse and soft pearls, her silver hair carefully set, but her eyes held a new delicate vulnerability. "Sweetheart," she said, embracing me a second longer than usual, a silent apology in her touch. My brother Robert was already in the formal dining room, his tie slightly loosened, a telltale sign of his discomfort. "You look good, Elle," he said, trying for a casual tone. You sound like you've been briefed. I shot back the edge in my voice, surprising even myself. He gave me a tight smile and gestured toward the table. Just sit down before he turns this into a board meeting. My father entered exactly on time, a silver-haired figure in a perfectly tailored navy suit, his steps measured and deliberate. "Eleanor," he stated, his voice devoid of warmth. "Dad," I replied, my voice equally flat. He sat at the head of the polished mahogany table beneath the antique chandelier. For a suspended moment, it almost felt like a normal family dinner, an illusion of peace. Then he began. "I've been following the coverage," he said, his gaze unwavering. "Forbes, the Journal, the Vancouver expansion plans. We've been busy," I replied, keeping my voice even. "So I can see." He folded his hands precisely on the table. "The numbers are impressive. You've built something substantial." My mother looked down at her lap. Robert reached for his water glass. No one touched the artisanal bread on the table. The compliment felt years too late and wrapped in business language, cold and calculated. My father continued as if I hadn't spoken. "Vance Financial is reviewing several growth paths. Hospitality is one of them. Your company fits where the market is moving." A cold dread began to settle in my stomach, a sickening realization of his true intent. "I didn't come here for an earnings call, Dad," I said, my voice low but firm. His mouth shifted almost into a smile, a flicker of triumph in his eyes. "No, you came because you recognize timing." Then he lifted a slim leather folder from beside him and slid it across the table toward me. "There's a clean path forward," he announced, his tone authoritative. "Vance Financial acquires a majority position in Vance Hospitality. You remain the face of operations. We provide capital, global reach, and a faster path to expansion. Everyone wins." I looked at the folder, then at him. Everyone. Such a polished word, so devoid of actual meaning for anyone but him. My mother finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "At least hear him out, Eleanor." I turned to her, my heart aching. "You knew about this?" She lowered her eyes. "I knew he wanted to talk to you." Robert set down his glass with a clink. "I told him this was the wrong way to do it, Dad." My father ignored both of them, his gaze fixed on me. 60% places the company in a stronger long-term position. Your personal upside would be extraordinary." "Dad," I said very calmly, my voice trembling slightly with the effort to control my anger. "I did not come back to this table so you could place a price on the life David and I built together." His expression held, but only just. "You built it. I'm acknowledging that." Acknowledging it would have looked very different 3 years ago. I shot back, my voice a little louder now. The room went still in that polished Upper East Side way that characterized our family dinners growing up, where no one raised a voice but everything sharpened anyway. He tapped one finger on the leather folder, a gesture of absolute certainty. "This is scale. This is access. This is the move that sets up a decade of unparalleled growth." I leaned back in my chair, a sudden clarity washing over me. There was only one thing that truly mattered. "And David?" I asked, my voice cutting through the tension. No one spoke. Not my mother. Not Robert. Not the man at the head of the table who had come prepared with valuation models and perfectly ironed certainty. The silence was deafening, a stark answer in itself. I did not need anyone to explain it. I understood it the instant it arrived. This dinner was never about inviting me home or celebrating my success. It was about stepping into the company my husband and I built and deciding how much of him was supposed to remain visible once the Vance name sat over the door again. David was an inconvenience, a name to be erased, a detail to be swept aside. The thought made my blood boil. He wanted to claim what we had created, to mold it into his image, and dismiss David as if he were nothing. I rested my fingertips on the unopened folder, feeling the smooth, cool leather. I looked at my father across all that polished wood and golden light, and I knew in that moment that I would not let him win. But his power was immense, and my defiance felt small against it. The next few weeks were a blur of intense negotiations and subtle sabotage. My father, true to form, began to apply pressure. A major loan facility we were pursuing for our British Columbia expansion suddenly faced unexpected hurdles. Our key supplier for sustainable materials announced a temporary delay in shipments, citing vague logistical issues. David and I worked tirelessly trying to circumvent these new obstacles, but it was like fighting an invisible enemy. Every time we found a solution, another problem would emerge, clearly orchestrated by my father's far-reaching network. "He's trying to wear us down," David said one night, his face etched with exhaustion. "He wants us to crack." And for a moment, I felt that crack beginning. The constant stressed the feeling of being constantly undermined the fear that everything we had built was vulnerable to his whims. I went to see my mother, who seemed more withdrawn than usual. She kept telling me to be reasonable, to consider the benefits. She didn't understand that it wasn't about the money or the expansion, but about integrity and respect. I met with our legal team, with our financial advisors, with trusted mentors in the hospitality industry. Everyone advised caution against direct confrontation with Arthur Vance. His resources were limitless, his influence far-reaching. The idea of losing everything, of watching my father dismantle our dream piece by piece, was a torment. One night, I stood on the balcony of our home, looking out at the glittering lights of Seattle, feeling utterly defeated. The vision I had fought for, the life I had built with David, it all felt like it was slipping away. My father's grip was tightening, suffocating me. He had even started sending messages through my mother, hinting at further complications if I remained uncooperative. It was a cold, calculated war of attrition designed to break my spirit. I was at my lowest point, questioning every decision I had ever made. Had I been naive to think I could escape his shadow? Was my dream simply too fragile to withstand his power? The thought of giving and the thought of seeing Vance Financial's name plastered over our hotels and David's contribution reduced to a footnote was unbearable. I knew if I accepted his offer, I would lose more than just control of my company. I would lose myself. But then a new fire began to burn within me. Not one of anger, but of cold, calculating resolve. I remembered a conversation David and I had long ago about our contingency plans for aggressive corporate maneuvers. We had always prided ourselves on thinking ahead. I started digging deeper, looking not just at how to defend our company, but how to turn his own tactics against him. My father loved a good play, a strategic move that surprised his opponents. I would give him a surprise he would never forget. The climax came 3 weeks later. Not in a cozy family dinner, but in a highly publicized press conference that I had orchestrated. My father had scheduled his own announcement for the same day, planning to reveal Vance Financial's strategic move into hospitality, and I knew he intended to name me as the face of his new venture as soon as I signed the papers. He assumed my refusal was just a formality. He had sent me a final email stating that the acquisition offer would expire at 5 o'clock that evening and that I should make a sensible decision. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, with reporters from every major business publication packed into the main hall of our flagship Seattle hotel, the Emerald Canopy, I took the stage with David by my side. He gave my hand a squeeze, a silent pledge of support. I started by thanking everyone for coming and talking about the incredible journey of Vance Hospitality. Then I paused and looked directly into the cameras, knowing my father would be watching. For years, I began, my voice clear and strong, my father, Arthur Vance, has measured success in a very specific way. He has always valued scale and financial dominance above all else. He has also, for a very long time, made it clear that he believed my choices, my partner, and my vision for Vance Hospitality were insufficient. A hush fell over the room. I took a deep breath. Today, I am here not to accept my father's latest offer to acquire Vance Hospitality. Rather, I am here to announce Vance Hospitality's own strategic expansion. My father's plan was to acquire a majority stake in my company, effectively taking control. My plan was to make his acquisition irrelevant. Over the past few months, I continued, Vance Hospitality has been in advanced discussions with a consortium of international investment firms and industry leaders who share our vision for sustainable, experience-driven hospitality. These discussions have culminated in a landmark agreement. I gestured to David, who then brought up a slide on the massive screen behind us. It wasn't just a slide, it was a bombshell. Today, I am proud to announce that Vance Hospitality, with the full backing of our new partners, is acquiring a majority stake in Ashford Capital Holdings, including its entire luxury hotel portfolio. A gasp rippled through the room. Ashford Capital Holdings was a struggling but venerable hospitality empire, a sleeping giant that my father's own company, Vance Financial, had been aggressively trying to acquire for years to jumpstart his own hospitality division. He had been so focused on my small company that he hadn't seen the real target I was aiming for. Not only had I refused his offer, but I had swooped in and taken his prize. This acquisition, I explained, will not only double Vance Hospitality's property count overnight, but also secure our position as a dominant force in the global luxury sustainable travel market. It is a testament to the power of vision passion and partnerships built on mutual respect. I made sure to emphasize the word respect, a direct jab at his attempts to marginalize David. I looked at David beside me and smiled. And speaking of partnerships, this entire expansion has been spearheaded by my incredibly talented husband, David Vance, whose architectural genius and strategic insight will now reshape the future of the Ashford portfolio. The applause was thunderous, a roar of approval. My father had wanted to erase David. Instead, I had elevated him onto a global stage. The consequence of my choice was swift and poetic. The news broke like a tsunami. My father's carefully laid plans for Vance Financial's foray into hospitality were in ruins. He had been outmaneuvered, outsmarted by the daughter he deemed insufficient. His own board was furious, his investors questioning his judgment. His calls to me went unanswered. My phone was ringing off the hook, but it wasn't him. It was a deluge of congratulatory calls from colleagues, investors, and media outlets. The resolution was immediate and deeply fulfilling. Vance Hospitality, now a much larger and more powerful entity, continued to thrive under my and David's leadership. We were no longer just a small, successful venture. We were a major player shaping the future of the industry. The loan facility that had faced hurdles magically cleared up. The supplier issues vanished. My mother called me later that evening, her voice choked with pride. "Eleanor," she said, "I always knew you had it in you. Your father, he always underestimated you." I didn't gloat, I didn't need to. The satisfaction came from knowing that I had protected our vision, secured David's place, and built something truly extraordinary on my own terms. My father's world of financial dominance had been briefly shaken by a daughter he considered a mere distraction. As for the unexpected twist, a week after the announcement, I received a cryptic email. It wasn't from my father, but from Robert. "He's been forced to step down from the board of Ashford Capital. You might want to consider offering him a consulting role. He's surprisingly good at due diligence, and you did just acquire his old stomping grounds." It was a subtle acknowledgement from my brother that my father's legacy had been built on more than just numbers, and that sometimes the student truly does become the master. My father had wanted to acquire my company. Instead, I acquired his.